Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Life Enthusiast Health Hangout. I'm Scott Paton, and joining us as usual is the founder and health coach at the Life Enthusiast Co-op, Martin Pytela. Hey, Martin, how are you doing today?
Hi, Scott. I'm doing great, and I should probably project a little better. Excited to be here, really.
Good. So our topic today is Fukushima. What's happening with Fukushima, and is this something that we need to be concerned about? I know in the Vancouver, British Columbia newspapers, they had a number of articles about, is the seafood safe to eat? Is should you get out of the rain? All these different things, because of course one of the main concerns we have is all this radiation that has been gone out into the atmosphere and into the ocean from Japan, and what is that impact going to be on the West Coast? Because it looks like we're now at that point where the water currents and the air currents have brought it to our shores.
Very much so. I mean, we're almost 3 years since the accident, and the predictions were dire, and the expectations are terrible, and it looks like nothing's going on. Or is it? In the mainstream news, you don't hear about it. The governmental controlled channels or the corporate controlled channels, it's as if nothing happened. We have completely forgotten about it. And yet you look online and you start noticing all kinds of stories. And is it the Chicken Little stories? Like, are we still, how do I best say it?
The sky is falling, Martin, and with it radioactive plutonium and silicium and all sorts of iodine and everything else, right?
Yeah, precisely. And so the scary thing is this. One party will tell you, oh, it's no big deal. Another party will tell you, well, it's the end of the world as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the truth? I went to look up the scope of the explosion just to see. And it appears that whatever happened at Fukushima is about 1,000 to 2,000 times bigger than the explosions that were in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As far as the amount of fuel, like plutonium, that was pushed out into the air.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah, I would say so. It's not a small problem. Or recently I saw an admission that 300 tons, that would be 3 cubic meters, are going into the Pacific Ocean. That would be 300 tons of contaminated water. So as far as comparing it to the Pacific Ocean, that's nothing much. That's like this one little 3-year-old boy taking a leak in a public pool.
Every day.
So eventually it adds up to something, doesn't it?
Particularly since it doesn't break down, right? I mean, if the 3-year-old boy was taking a leak every day in the pool, but unfortunately the material that he was putting into the pool remained active in the same way it was when it went in, that could be a bit of a problem in a significant amount of time, obviously. But normally when you take a 3-year-old kid and put him in a pool and he does his bit, you pretty well know that it'll all break down sooner or later regardless, right?
Right, but here we have the boy keeps coming back and does it every day, right? So yeah. Where's the level that we're going to be concerned with? And the problem with the radioactive, I don't know what to call it, debris or exhaust or garbage, is that it doesn't go away. They call it the half time. How long does it take for half of the volume to dissipate? Well, it's fairly quick for the iodine. The iodine really is not a big issue. Iodine 131 has a half-life of 8 days. So in 8 days...
So Martin, just let me ask you, okay, so let's suppose the problem with the iodine, that if it's radioactive, is we're concerned about it getting into the thyroid and a few of the other organs that it might accumulate in. So let's say I got it, and all of a sudden I've got all this radioactive iodine in my thyroid. 8 days later, it's half the radioactivity, and 8 days later, it's half the radioactivity. So in a relatively short period of time, it's down to relatively insignificant amount of radiation that's continually being put into my thyroid or whatever other organs it's entering. But will that not have done a fair bit of damage in those 8 days, 16 days, 32 days?
Oh, absolutely. The problem is that when it hits you, if you inhale, absorb enough of it, you're going to fry out your thyroid. In fact, it's exactly the same thing that doctors do to patients when they say they're going to disable their thyroid and make it inactive. So I was trying to say that the half-life of this iodine is fairly short, but by the time this material is reduced to an insignificant amount, it's already done its damage. So if it happens that you have inhaled a significant quantity, it's going to be game over for your thyroid. And for the rest of your life, you will be on thyroid medication because you will have disabled it. And it could get worse. It could actually cause the cancer of the thyroid or of your throat. And that's no laughing matter.
So for those of us that don't know what the thyroid does, why is it important that we have a healthy thyroid?
Oh, geez. Well, the thyroid gland itself is in charge of a great many things. It regulates your endocrine system. It regulates your metabolism. So it regulates whether you will be a skinny person or a overweight person, whether you will be feeling cold or not cold, whether you'll be tired or not tired. Many functions.
So it's important.
Oh yeah, critically important.
Okay.
Anyway, so the problem is that when something explodes and puts out a lot of radioactivity in the air, that danger, the short-term iodine danger, dissipates fairly quickly. So when the explosion happens, a month later, there's only a quarter of the original radioactivity in the air. In 2 months, it's a 16th, and 3 months, it's a 1/30th. So pretty soon it becomes insignificant. The big deal is that you don't want to be caught unprepared. Your thyroid is a fairly indiscriminate absorber of all the halogens. So if it's suffering from insufficiency of iodine, it'll pick it up. Good, bad, ugly. So if some radioactive iodine comes your way, you will absorb it and it'll get stuck in your thyroid gland. I don't know, am I making it clear enough?
I think so. So the iodine is a concern. It's more of it's a short-term concern in terms of the damage that it can do. It might be a long-term concern if it does a lot of damage to your thyroid. But we've got a lot of other stuff going into the air and into the water that has a significantly longer half-life and can be. So what are we going to be doing about that?
Yeah, that is a hard thing because when you inhale some cesium, that's 20,000 years, and plutonium, that's in millions of years. So, well, there are different isotopes. I should not make it so simplistic. There are isotopes that dissipate quickly, and there are isotopes that take a long while. Like some of them last only seconds or days, but there are isotopes that these explosions create that last thousands of years.
So this is not a problem that's going to be going away anytime soon.
Yes. This is, as far as you and I are concerned, it's pretty close to forever. Or for the rest of our lives, anyway. Okay, so the explosions in Fukushima. What did they actually do, right? Was it just a little nothing, a little fart in the wind, or was it a big deal? I mean, you would be expecting that because somebody at the mainstream news is talking about it, that this wasn't a big deal. Right?
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet.
And yet, every day it's putting out more of this radiation into the air, into the water. I saw a presentation, I tried to look it up, but failed, that was showing the quality of life on the West Coast. And they were essentially predicting that over the next 15 to 20 years, the whole food chain will become unusable to us. That could put an end to the Pacific fishery.
Although there's a few people that would say we've done a pretty good job of getting rid of it all by ourselves with the overfishing.
Yeah, true enough. Yesterday I saw a blip on the news. They were talking about, I think it was scallops. And they said, well, the pH of the ocean changed. It went from its normal 8.2 to 7.2, which stops the shells of these animals forming. And all of a sudden, you have no scallops. They just don't survive. Period. Done.
Right. Nothing to protect them from their predators.
Right. Well, they just don't develop. It's as if somebody took away your skeleton.
Well, that's not good.
Not at all. So all of a sudden, the whole, I don't know, it's a whole industry. It goes away. You used to be able to buy, I don't know, some species, like this was the scallop, you might like it. Well, too bad, so sad, don't exist. But whatever lives on that scallop is also a threat. So I don't know how, when you pull a thread out of a sweater, it could start unraveling pretty soon, the whole thing.
Yes, that's true. So we have Fukushima. We've got a lot of nasty stuff heading into the ocean on an ongoing basis. Obviously, Telco, which is the company that built the facility that was pretty much demolished by the tidal waves and the earthquake, has been saying, oh, it's not so bad, and then of course things come out like, yeah, it kind of is bad. My first concern would, of course, be for the Japanese people that are living around there. It's like they're right there. I mean, it's kind of like, short drive and you're there. I mean, it's a small island. That would be my first concern. And then, of course, my second concern is we're their neighbors. We're across the ocean. All of the air heads our way. All of the ocean currents come along Alaska and British Columbia and then down into California. So, Washington State, Oregon, and California. So all of us, I think, have a vested interest in making sure that this stops if it hasn't already been stopped. And then what do we do about cleaning it up?
Yeah, I think it's already too late. In fact, it's not just the water that comes to the shore, not just the ocean currents. It appears that a lot of this material has gotten into the atmosphere, and then it comes down with the snow or comes down on the rain. And recently, a really interesting twist was with the fires in California. A lot of stuff that has fallen out of the sky over the last, 100 years. When you burn it, it goes right back into the air. So all of a sudden, you have this terrible contamination. Just by fluke, I was talking to one of my clients, and he was telling me that he was helping to put out fires in New Mexico, and inadvertently inhaled a lot of the radioactive fallout that was released there in the 1940s when they were doing the testing there. Not funny. All of a sudden, the sky is fully contaminated by radioactive debris, plutonium, cesium, and those ones.
So the old saying, what goes up must come down, is now reversed. What comes down must go up.
Yep, up in flames again, back into the atmosphere. And so, interestingly enough, of course, what do? we are quite fortunate that we have the zeolite available to us. This material is quite capable of absorbing, binding, and taking out of our bodies these heavy metals. So I decided that I was going to continue to eat ocean fish and stay on the zeolite supplementation for the rest of my life.
That might be the only way to do it if you want to live long, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how does the zeolite, so you talked about the heavy metals, like that would be the plutonium and the silesium and the other things that are radioactive that could get into our systems, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So how does the zeolite work binding with these metals?
It's really awesome because it has the ability to bind electropositive elements. Electropositive as in missing electrons. So both the mercury and cadmium and plutonium, they are electropositive. And the zeolite itself, it's a lattice network of molecules, or I should say atoms, strung together. It's sort of like the best analogy I can come up with is a sponge. If you could visualize a sponge, it has a whole bunch of little caves. And so when you squeeze the sponge in a liquid and then release it, it will suck into these little caves water and whatever garbage or dirt that's suspended in that water.
Oh, okay.
So in a similar manner, the zeolite will attract to itself these individual molecules of the heavy metals and bind them. So
wow.
There it is.
Is there any other items that you've come across that could do similar work?
There are some natural tools. Combination of cilantro and chlorella is known to be able to bind and excrete heavy metals. Cilantro is allegedly quite good at knocking out the heavy metals from the sites where the body's hiding them, and the shells of the chlorella cells somehow are attracted to, or the metals are attracted to it, so somehow it binds it and takes it out of your body.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel enthusiastic about the zeolite. And what's really strange to me is that the mainstream is not talking about it. The Russians, when they had the accident in Chernobyl, they used zeolite to try to fix their rivers and lakes, and they dusted their fields with it, and they even baked zeolite cookies and gave it to their children to decontaminate them from the radioactive pollution.
There's still a large area around Chernobyl that's basically no man's land, right?
Yes, that's correct. There's a phenomenal program that I watched on PBS called Radioactive Wolves, which discuss. Some people have done research into the animals, because I think it's about 50 miles across this whole area that just was turned over back to nature. All people were moved out of there.
Wow.
So the nature's returning, and it's the rabbits and the deer and the moose, and I don't think they have moose in Ukraine, but the wolves are back.
Glow in the dark wolves.
Well, actually, no. What happens is that they have about double the rate of birth defects than they have elsewhere.
Oh.
So in a human population, that would be an unacceptable problem. Like instead of 2 kids in 1,000, you would have 4 kids in 1,000 trouble. Or maybe it would be, instead of 20, it would be 40. I don't really know the statistics. But it's...
but when it's the wolf, we don't really care, right?
Well, the wolves don't care either. So
right.
The damaged ones just don't make it into adulthood.
Yeah. So you can have a litter of 4 or 5 or 6 wolves, and if normally 1 or 2 were weak, now you've got 3 or 4 that are weak. You still got a couple that live on, right?
Yeah, something like that. And it's not that bad. It's more like 20 in 1,000 as opposed to 10 in 1,000. That sort of level of problems.
So yeah, so the wolves are coming back.
So their people are going back there too. But what they're saying is, as long as you don't touch much of anything, and especially if you don't disturb the soil, things are okay. You can walk through there, you can observe. Just don't eat the food that grows there.
And don't drink the water.
Yeah.
And don't get the dust moving at all if you can help it.
So that makes it pretty bad prediction for California, doesn't it?
Well, especially since you've already talked about how when you had this fire, you've got all this old radioactive material that's being spewed back up into the environment.
Yeah, it's really scary. I have the sense that the radioactive or nuclear power generating industry is trying to make it look okay. As in, we're safe, we're good, we're the good guys.
Yeah.
And it's not. I mean, there's no such thing as safe nuclear power.
Yeah, as bad as we may think oil burning and coal burning power generation may be, at least when it kind of settles down, it breaks down and whatever. It's not going to be around for a million years with a half-life.
Yeah, that's correct. That's the big deal. What to do with the fuel? Part of the problem in Fukushima was that they were actually storing a lot of the spent fuel right on the same site.
Yeah, because they have no place to put it.
Right. Not in Japan. They don't have an old abandoned mine in Nevada that they could haul it to.
Right.
By the way, you mentioned something like you were saying, oh, TEPCO did this or TEPCO that did that. The most funny part about it is that the design of these nuclear reactors is General Electric. So it's the American technology. Some of them were made by General Electric. Some of them were made by Westinghouse, and some by Hitachi. So yes, we have American technology installed in Japan. And we're just sort of looking down our noses at them saying, oh, these Japanese, they messed up. Well, it was the American technology that got messed up.
Right. Wow.
Okay, so let me try and at least give some hope here, shall I? Should I?
Yeah, we need some good news now, Martin. We're all feeling kind of contaminated.
Yeah, that's the terrible thing. I personally feel hopeful. I'm thinking as long as I can get a sufficient supply of the zeolite, and I bought enough to last me for the rest of my life, because I didn't want to go with that. I think that's going to keep us going as far as the protection from the radioactive damage.
So there's two types of zeolite. There's a liquid form and then there's a powder form, correct?
Right. Yeah.
So
it's just how you deliver it. It starts as powder, and you can either buy it as powdered and add to your smoothies or salads, or you can buy it in capsules where you can add it, or just swallow it capsules whole. When it comes to the liquid, that is it's the same material, but this time it's suspended into a liquid form, so it's much more convenient to deal with it, easier to pick up and to eat or to ingest.
Okay, so let's make a couple assumptions. Let's assume that there's a fair amount of this radioactive fallout that's hitting us from the Japanese catastrophe that happened, and let's also assume, actually it's interesting because in the news the other day, I think it was in South Carolina, they were reading very high radiation levels, and they was like, I don't know why or how this happened, of course, so there was some sort of leakage from another plant. I'm actually amazed when you see a map of the number of plants, atomic electric generating plants in North America, how many there are. I had no idea. But let's assume that some of that sometimes gets out into our environment as well. What would be kind of a reasonable amount of zeolite to take?
Well, I believe that a person should be taking it continuously because there is now a constant presence of this contamination. It's not just the nuclear, not the cesium and plutonium, it's also the mercury, because the coal-burning power plants are putting 50,000 tons of mercury into the air every year in the United States alone. Never mind China. So all of us, everybody, should be on it. So if you're doing the powder, you should be probably on about a quarter teaspoon a day, just for maintenance.
Okay. And if you hadn't had any ever, and you think, well, what should I do to kind of start to get myself to a good spot?
I think you could do about a teaspoon a day for, say, 3 months. When I first started on it, it was very entertaining because I was watching the urine that was coming out of me. It was very colorful and very smelly. It was just amazing. So I was very pleased to see just how much material it was dragging out of me. Not just the heavy metals, but also all the aromatic organic compounds.
Okay, so let's say you took 2 teaspoons a day for twice a day. Would it be toxic to us? Wouldn't it cause some health problems of its own?
I tried to take a high dose, and early on it was giving me a bit of a liver overload. Well, what that meant for me was that I was getting really tired in the afternoon.
Oh, so the biggest problem we had taking too much zeolite is we felt tired in the afternoon.
Yeah, that was pretty much the downside.
And then you stopped taking quite so much, and you didn't feel tired so much because your liver wasn't overloaded.
Yes.
That's good to know.
Well, yeah, it has designation GRAS, generally recognized as safe.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you get the liquid one, I know it's a smaller amount. It comes in a small bottle with an eyedropper. Would you take like 8 drops a day as a maintenance, or 4, or 16, or what?
Well, the recommended active dosage is something like 13 drops 2 or 3 times a day. The slow maintenance, I would say 4 or 5 drops a day is enough.
Okay.
And it's not just zeolite when in the liquid form. It's also mixed with humic and fulvic acid, and also with DHQ, dehydro something. It's an antioxidant and pain reduction.
Oh, I see. Okay. Cool. And now I know that Life Enthusiast also has some Humalife products that we're very excited about. How would they relate to this, or do they relate to this at all?
Somewhat. The fulvic acid is really good at enabling your cells to detoxify themselves.
So we get some mercury or aluminum or cesium or iodine or plutonium in inside our cells. It'll help pull it out?
Yes, that's correct. It will help the body deal with it, get rid of it.
And that's a little different process from the zeolite.
Right. Yeah. The fulvic acid is more like helping the body push things out, whereas the zeolite itself, if you could visualize a Pac-Man, I think it's the best.
Okay, so the Pac-Man just goes along, eats it all up, takes it out.
Yeah.
Whereas we're actually, so the two of them together would work quite well.
Right. It's very good to do it that way. Take both. And in fact, that's what the liquid zeolite formulation does include, the humic and fulvic together with the zeolite.
Oh, okay, cool.
But no harm taking extra because the fulvic has so many other benefits.
Oh, what are some of those benefits?
Well, I just mentioned it, helping your body absorb more of what's coming in as nutrient absorption.
Okay.
But primarily detoxification, helping the cells get rid of things that they don't want to have.
And that's really the problem that we all have right now, right? Is we're in a more toxic soup than we've probably ever been in.
It's a curious experiment, this industrial age. We were designed, or we evolved, to live on a savanna or a prairie or something like that. There was no factory, no pharmaceutical, no fertilizer, no petroleum industry, no pharmaceuticals, and especially no heavy metals. So I think our physiology just doesn't know what to do with it.
For sure, right? Well, that totally makes sense. I was going to say we're coming towards the end of our time together, and I was wondering if there's any last comments you wanted to make about Fukushima or about how to deal with the radioactivity and the other heavy metals that seem to be running rampant in today's society.
Well, it's really important to understand that this is not going away, and that to make it, especially to allow the next generation to do it, we need to detoxify ourselves. We need to detoxify our children. We need to detoxify the people, the women that will become mothers of the next generation. So it's important that everybody knows about this, that everybody learns that zeolite is available, is effective, it's not expensive, and it's something that everybody should be using now. We're all now getting rained on the radioactive garbage, and we all are getting rained on mercury.
Yeah, and you know so it's one thing to say that, and then the other side of it is the fact that we have a lot of clinics popping up that are fertility clinics, and that's because people can't have children, which of course is a detox problem. We have autism that's 1 in 55 young boys now, 1 in 88 as an average young children, and mercury is a known neurotoxin that once it gets in the brain causes lots of problems. And then you have asthma and ADHD, and you've got all these different problems that everyone's going, well, we don't know why it's caused, what's causing it, you know, and of course we can assume that what's causing it is a toxic environment, both in terms of, you know, not getting rest and being stressed and that aspect of the lives that we lead, and then also the fact that we have all these heavy metals that we're being bombarded with that we just are not. I mean, mercury is the most toxic, or second most toxic, the most toxic thing that we have in our environment, and yet we're spewing it all over the place. So these are all the outcomes of what we've created in this environment today.
Right, the benefits of the industrial age. It's wonderful that I can be in a living room like this one, cozy and warm, even though it's really cold outside. And I'm quite comfortable, and I've got the computer going, and I have the internet, and all of these other comforts. I'm grateful for that. But gosh, we definitely have to learn that there's the downside to it and how to take care of it.
Yeah, and protect ourselves. And the good news is every problem has a solution, and we've got a really good solution here for the problems of mercury and radioactive materials that are being spewed into our environment, and we need to get that message out and that knowledge out there so people can actually do something about it.
Precisely. So
Martin, if somebody if somebody wanted to get some zeolite or some Humalife or cilantro, go to your local organic grocer to get the cilantro. But if they wanted to know more about zeolite and the Humalife and some of these other products that you've got at Life Enthusiast, what should they do?
It's available on the website, life-enthusiast.com, and the categories humic, fulvic, and zeolite. They're all put in the same product category. And nearby you'll also find category for iodine.
Oh, good.
And if you're having a hard time with the website, just give us a call. We're at 866-543-3388.
Great, and you're there. You'll answer the phone. You'll answer any questions anybody has.
Frequently, it's myself, yes.
Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day, Martin. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we're going to be doing these on an ongoing basis, so please make sure that you sign up for the Life Enthusiast newsletter. And it's either that way or that way, because we always get confused because it's the opposite of what we think. But we'll see you next time, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.